every now and again you get to interview someone that's influential in your life and someone that has created art and has been able to combine three worlds: fashion, entertainment, and music into his repertoire of work. Chris Cuffaro is much more than that, and we here at the Rock Pit were blessed to sit down with him for close on 2 hours and to discuss his career and everything that he's created um, in his time. What an incredible human. This is the first part of three, and in this part, we talk about Chris's early life through to his move to LA and his entrance into the entertainment industry and obviously the world of music photography. Sit back and enjoy part one of our exclusive interview with the one and only Chris Cuffaro. Joining me today at the Rock Pit is photographer, videographer, and a man that calls Australia his second home, Chris Cuffaro. Chris himself, you may not know by face, but you certainly know his photos, and his story is as incredible as his images. It's a great honour, and thank you for joining us, Chris, and letting myself and the Rock Pit into your world.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I love this stuff. I live and breathe for this stuff in my life and sharing stories and helping and having a good time. It's all what it's all about these days.
Absolutely. So, first of all, tell us what brings you to Australia this time.
So I'll give you a short version of a long story. So this is my 12th trip to Australia since 1988. My first trip was with George Michael and the Faith Tour. And I fell in love literally the first day I came to Australia. And as I like to say, it's love at first sight. And I've been coming back ever since. This is the first trip, though, in the last five that I came here with no real plans, no real exhibitions scheduled, nothing really. And I just wanted to get out of LA and I wanted to get out of our country for what it's going through. And I wanted to come back to Bondi Beach and just have some fun and see my friends. So that's what brought me here this time around.
Fantastic. So, born in 1960, you grow up in San Jose, and you started taking photos at 10 years old. But your love and your fascination with photos began at a much earlier age too. I believe around the age of 5 through your grandfather. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that story and that
So
relationship.
yeah, so basically the again, short versions of long stories. My grandfather was a police detective in the 40s in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, right? And growing up as a kid, he used to, and now I understand it. When I was a kid, it was annoying, but he would tell us the same stupid stories over and over again. How I solved this crime and I put this guy to Alcatraz and I at the time it used to drive us all crazy because if you mentioned the word finger or print or fingerprint, he'd start telling you stories about how he solved this crime. So he would show me these crime scene photos, which I have to this day, of these crime scenes of dead people and hangings and suicide, you name it, at a very, very young age. And it made me curious about photography at a very young, and I would ask him questions like, oh, what were photographers using back then, and how did they do this? And so at a very young age, I was very curious. And then I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Funny Face with Audrey Hepburn and Fred Astaire, one of the greatest movies ever made. I saw that when I was around 10 years old. My mom loved musicals and would let me stay home to watch them, like Singing in the Rain, Damn Yankees, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, and Funny Face. And so that movie is about a photographer uh, played by Fred Astaire who meets Audrey Hepburn at a bookstore and then turns her into a model and then they fall in love and live happily ever after. Well, I had a crush on Audrey since I was like 5 years old. And so that movie, I just remember watching that movie going, I want to be Fred Astaire because that's how I'm going to meet Audrey Hepburn at 10 years old. And I was in sixth grade at the time, and my mom had this tiny little brownie camera. I don't know if you remember those little, they're
Yeah,
like a little plastic brown box.
yeah.
So we went on this week, what do you call it? A week, like a summer campy week long thing.
Yeah.
And my mom let me borrow the camera and I shot my first roll of film. I came home, my mom processed it, got these little prints. I tell people I don't exaggerate this. I literally went, I want to do this for the rest of my life. It was love at first sight. So I graduated a little sixth grade grammar school and I went to seventh grade in junior high is what we call it, seventh and eighth grade. Well, seventh grade, there was a photography class and I literally, Mr. Kitajima at Peter Burnett Junior High, I took that class and I never looked back. And by the time I was in eighth grade, I made my business cards and started my business.
Fantastic. What a great story. Do you still have those original brownie photos still? I guess is
No,
the question.
it's the only role I'm probably missing of my past because my dad used to clean the garage out a lot and he used to throw things away. He just would like boxes. Nobody's touched this, throw it away. So I lost those a long time ago, which bums me out because I really do wish I had them. But I have everything after that. I'm the
Yeah.
most organized photographer you'll ever meet. I teach classes on how to organize and stay organized. So I can show you pictures. Like I had the first time I shot models, I was 12 years old. I got all those photos. I
Oh
have all that
wow.
film. Yeah, I'm really crazy.
Wow. And that's the next part of your journey, I guess, is that from starting your own business, you then started doing shoots at modeling schools
Well,
and
yeah, but
obviously,
I think every photographer, including yourself, I mean, we all have to start somewhere, right? And
yeah,
it doesn't matter what age you are, just, we all start somewhere in this journey. And what I love is, I always tell people I got into photography for two reasons. One, photography, I loved it. Two, girls.
yeah.
Um, started subscribing to Playboy at like 10 years old, and I was like, I want to do this, and started subscribing to Vogue when I was 12. I just was all about models. So I started shooting for these modeling agencies in the Bay Area. They had like modeling schools, more like,
Yeah.
teach you how to be a model kind of stuff. So I was the photographer on the weekends taking pictures of the girls where they practice modeling and stuff. So it wasn't big money, but it was fun to shoot the girls and meet girls. I mean, I was, started shooting models at like 12, all through high school. I never went to school because I didn't need it, but just shooting models, it was fun, just it was like, girls. I was just shooting girls and being around girls.
Yeah, fantastic. And you also mentioned that Playboy subscription that you had as well as
Yeah.
Vogue and the other things. Did you ever end up shooting for Playboy yourself?
No, I tried. I tried and tried. I did go to the mansion a few times in the 80s. My first trip to the mansion, actually, I was 24 years old and went to the mansion and met Hef. I knew a bunch of playmates when I first moved to LA. That's where I was shooting playmates mostly. But I had gone there many times and tried to get in and shoot for them. I never did though. I never did. Kind of one of my big regrets.
Yeah, I can imagine so being such a formative thing
Oh,
for your youth. And I love that I watched an interview with you that most people will turn around and say, "Hey, I've got Playboy for the articles. You
yeah,
got
no, I
I've
bought it for
got
the
Playboy
pictures.
for the photos."
Yeah, no, my dad
Yep.
appreciated it.
Yeah.
My mom thought it was crazy. I was lucky. I always tell people I was lucky. I was left alone. I was the youngest of four, and my parents got tired of raising kids by the time I came around. So I was on my own at a very young age, and so I was able to do whatever I wanted to do. And so, subscribing to Playboy was not a big deal to them. They were like, whatever, Chris is a photographer. They always thought I was crazy, and I was. So it was like just doing my thing. But I think for me, though, it was like at a very young age, I'm sure you know these photographers, but at 12 years old, I discovered Richard Avedon. I discovered Irving Penn, David Bailey, out of England.
Yep.
Those three guys, man, that they raised me as far as I'm concerned. I got to meet David actually a few years ago, but they were the ones that really influenced me more than anybody. I mean, more than anybody. Avedon was God as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. His work is incredible. So from modeling, you step into fashion. Um, the progression from yeah, from the progression from modeling. How did that segue into fashion? Was
Well,
that a hand in hand type
yeah,
of
but when I was,
relationship?
when you're young and you're like, young and new to photography, I would shoot anything and everything. Because during high school, for clients, I used to shoot for insurance companies and do like
Yeah,
accident
right.
scenes, things like that. And then I'd shoot anything basically. You pay me, I'm there. I was a cheap hoe, as I like to say, um, and like very cheap.
Yeah.
I shot my first magazine cover I did was a car magazine cover at 16.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it was like like when, but I started shooting concerts at 16 as well.
Mm.
Um, but I moved to LA at 22, to be a fashion photographer. That was my goal. And between 18 and 22, I was shooting, models. I shot for part-time for a private investigator. I actually went on some police crime scenes a few times,
Yeah.
seen some crazy stuff in my time. Took pictures of dead bodies, which was not fun.
No.
Um, and just did all this stuff. But moving to LA, with the goal was to be a fashion photographer, and that all ended on the first day in LA. It's
We'll get
crazy.
into that in a
Yeah.
little bit for sure. So, along the way, I mean, obviously you had the passion and the desire and the love of photography. Was getting paid for it, the perfect reward or the perfect pairing for you? And how did you balance, and navigate your way through what you charged, where you charged, how you charged as you progressed?
So it is a big different world today than when I
Oh yeah,
started out in the 80s and the 90s. And it's a different world today. I mentor over 50 photographers nowadays, and I'll help anybody who needs help.
yeah,
But I'm not easy. I'm actually pretty tough on everybody. But look, the world of photography today, when I moved to LA, there was 10 photographers, and there's now 10 million. The budgets are gone. The money is pennies. When I moved to LA, photographers were getting 10,000, 20,000 to do movie posters, even if not more. There was real money. And when I started in the music world, the money was real, what I call real money, not
yeah,
today's money.
yeah,
So getting paid, I ran a good business. So I always pass these words of wisdom on. When I was 13 years old, I met this one photographer, and he was like nothing fancy or anything, but he was just a professional photographer. But he gave me the best advice ever, which was, it's not the photography business, it's the business of photography. And he says, you could take the greatest pictures in the world, but if you can't run your business, you ain't going to be around. And
yeah,
it was 100% true, because I've seen some of the most talented guys just disappear because they couldn't handle a business.
yeah,
Um, they couldn't be nice, they couldn't deliver on time or just be nice. So it was always about the business first. And I learned from some good people. I had some good mentors before I moved to LA, and I had great mentors after I got to LA. So for me, it was always about the business side of things, and having my fun. Taking pictures is 10% of the job, but 90% is the most important part.
yeah, absolutely. Um, Now, if we go back to high school, that's where you first discovered shooting concerts, live
Well,
gigs, live shows. And you mentioned that Earth, Wind and Fire were a pivotal band in so many ways for that. They were the first band, if that am I correct in that?
no, the first band I shot was not a band, was my favorite bass player, Stanley Clark. You ever hear of Stanley
Yes,
Clark?
Stanley Clark, very
Jazz
familiar with.
bass player.
Yeah,
So my first concert was Return to Forever on April 26, 1976. Was Return to Forever, which the greatest jazz fusion group ever. They were like the Beatles of
yeah,
jazz fusion.
yeah,
So that was my first concert, and what, 6 months, 7 months later, I saw Stanley solo when he had his album out called School Days, and I snuck
yes,
my camera into the Berkeley Community Theater, you know, in my jacket, and had one roll of film with, like, 10 rows back with a normal little lens on it, nothing
yeah,
like a Minolta SRT 101, and just focusing, and took a roll of film. Um, and he was my hero. I grew up in the kind of the hood, as I like to say. So I grew up on R&B and funk and disco and rock. I grew up on everything, but Earth, Wind and Fire was huge. I saw them 6 times when I was in high school, and
wow,
I saw the Commodores, and Rufus and Chaka Khan, and I go down the list. It's crazy. Most people don't even know half the people I saw, but they were great. Rock wise, I saw the Beach Boys, I saw Fleetwood Mac, I saw the Jacksons. Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
was, I tried to take my camera in wherever I could. Not always, but I tried to. It was fun. It was fun. I didn't was shooting it though just to make prints to sell in school. I wasn't thinking about music photography at all. Like, it wasn't even on my radar
yeah,
at all.
yeah, yeah. That was just a nice little side hustle.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
And plus, I always tell people I love music probably more than I love photography. I mean, especially those days.
Yeah.
But I just
Oh,
don't know how to play
absolutely.
anything.
Absolutely. What a time to be alive and to live through and to be able to
Oh,
go and see, and experience live
it
in
was
those
great. It was
realms.
so much.
I wish I could time travel back to the 70s.
Yeah. I did this interview years ago. It's on my website, Cuffaro Hits. I interviewed Del Ferrano. So Del, one of the legendary, he and Bill Graham invented merch. Now you
Yes.
go to concerts, there's t-shirts everywhere. They invented it.
Yeah.
And I did this interview with Dell, and he was in the Bay Area as well during all that time. And we just laughed. Like all the concerts I went to as a kid, he was backstage at, selling merchandise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Bill Graham was God to us in the Bay Area because he put on all the best shows. He invented the festivals, whether it was, Monterey Pop to the Day on the Greens. I mean, before, just after Woodstock when all that kind of stuff started happening.
Yeah.
So Dell had the best stories, like amazing stories of
Yeah.
backstage people and everything.
Fantastic. So in the time frame between all of this, you actually bought your first camera at the age of 18.
Yeah.
What was that camera? And
An
do you still
Olympus
have it?
OM1,
Yep.
black body with a motor drive winder on the bottom. With all I could afford at the time was the normal 50 millimeter lens, but
Yep.
I love that camera. I couldn't afford a Nikon. I wanted a Nikon, but I couldn't afford a Nikon.
Yeah, for sure.
The,
So
my junior high teacher, Mr. Kitajima, I always tell people, I laugh that I remember this stuff, and that was like, 50 years ago. But
yeah,
he said to us in the classroom, "You're not a real photographer unless you shoot Hasselblad or Nikon." That was it. You're not a real photographer until you use those cameras.
wow.
And I still believe that to this day.
Yeah,
And especially back in the old days of film, the Nikon F2s was
yes.
what I had. I had three F2 ASs with drives. Those things are tanks. You could
Yeah,
drop them off a building and it'll still work, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely robust as all
Yep.
buggery. So and again, we sort of touched on it. You moved to LA in 82 at the age of 21 or 22.
22.
Um, what obviously you wanted to shoot fashion in LA, but it took a slightly different course for you, didn't it? You ended up going into film stills and that
Well,
realm of the world.
well, I tell people this story and it's the truth. I moved to LA because I got a job at Photo Impact. Photo Impact is a black and white lab in LA. If anybody ever goes there, please go by. It's been around for 45 plus years. The owner, Don, is the greatest fucking owner I ever worked for. I just saw him a few months ago and interviewed him for my documentary. But I moved to LA with that dream of being a fashion photographer. And on day one at that job, Don says to me, "What do you want to do when you're here?" And I said to him, "I want to be a fashion photographer." And he looked at me and goes, "It's not going to happen." He just straight to my face, "It's not going to happen. So forget about it." I went, "Excuse me?" And he goes, I was like, "What?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Chris, you're in the wrong city. You need to be in New York." He goes,
Yeah,
two, he goes, "Number two, you know nothing about fashion." And he was right because I just knew girls.
yeah,
And then number three, he goes, "You're on the wrong team." I said, "Excuse me, you want to be on the wrong team?" He goes, "You're on the blue team. You need to be on the pink team." And I
yeah,
said, "You mean I need to be gay?" And he goes, "Yeah, to be work in the fashion business, you got to be gay." And
yeah,
I said,
yeah,
"I don't want
right.
to be gay." And he so I was like, "Well, then you might as well forget about fashion."
Yeah,
So the first year I was there, I got to meet Bruce Weber, Helmut Newton, Herb Ritz. I processed their film. Like I met everybody who was anybody, and
yeah,
anybody in the photography world has gone to that lab, and even Avedon at one point. But I got to ask these photographers questions,
yeah,
and so it kind of got me down this path of what are you going to do, and how are you going to do it, and I slowly fell into this whole music thing. So
yeah, yeah,
it was pretty cool. But like I always tell people, I've shot my share of fashion. I still do.
yeah,
But I'm not Avedon. I wanted to be Richard Avedon. I mean, I want to be Avedon since I was 10.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
if
Well, I
if he
mean,
can shoot Audrey Hepburn, so can I.
yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the thing too is to know that you still have that goal and that dream, and that it's still sitting there. I mean, that
Yeah.
drive behind you to achieve is incredible after a career as extensive as yours. You haven't become complacent in any way. So I love that about you, and I think that's what draws me to you in exploring, your website and interviews and all
Yeah.
of the things that I've learned about you. Um,
They
is
all
just
say the same thing. He's crazy. And I'm like, thank you. Appreciate that.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Again, I saw an interview on that whole thing where you own that so completely. It's like, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I always tell people, if you were here right now and called me normal, I'd take you outside the back and beat the shit out of you.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not normal. I don't want to do normal. I don't do boring. I don't do normal. I'm sorry. It's just not what
No,
I
no.
do. And luckily, that's another thing. When I moved to Los Angeles, sidebar here, I was told up until I was moved to LA that I was crazy, and I thought that was a bad thing. I thought it was a negative
Yeah,
thing. Then I
yeah,
moved to LA and realized I'm crazy, but I ain't that crazy. You know, you start meeting people in LA that are, actors, writers, directors, rock
yeah,
stars, porn stars, hookers. You start
yeah,
realizing I am not that crazy. I'm
yeah,
actually
yeah,
rather boring. And
yeah,
so you learn real fast what crazy really is.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So,
Crazy.
so your introduction into to TV and film skills, how does that happen? How do you first get
So
into doing these things?
Well, basically, the day I got to LA, I told Don, and I love the fact that he remembered this when I saw him recently. I told him I'm not the best photographer in the world. I'm not even close, especially then. But no one's going to outwork me. I believe in work ethic. Nobody's going to outwork me. If you tell me Annie Leibovitz is working 12 hours a day, I will work 14. If you tell me, Avedon was working 14, I'll work 16.
Yeah,
That's just my mentality since I was a kid. So I got to LA, and in the first few years working at the lab, talking to all these photographers, I saw, at the time, it's different now. It was the entertainment capital of the world.
yeah,
So that's the work that is there for photographers.
yeah,
What little fashion there was really tiny. But photographers like Greg Gorman, who's a hero of mine,
yeah,
shooting movie posters,
yeah, yeah,
$100,000 a day, shooting Herb Ritz, doing magazines, editorial, fashion, posters, you know, that's where it's at. And so I slowly tried to work towards that. But at the same time, I discovered music at the shooting music around 24, 25. And that changed my life because I didn't think about music photography. So how that all started. So it's the it's the entertainment capital. What am I going to go look for? What am I going to do? Weddings? No, that's
yeah.
not going to happen. I did one wedding though, and I did Tom Hanks's wedding, and that was enough.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That
Yes.
was the one wedding that you did. Wow.
Yeah. I always tell people that was 1988. I
Yeah.
always tell people like I did that one, and I realized I just climbed Everest. I can't go any higher than this, so
No,
I never did another one.
no, no, no. Absolutely. What a way to start and what a way to finish.
Exactly. It was the
But
beginning and the end of my wedding career.
yeah, perfect. We'll put a chapter on that and move on. So from shooting, movie posters and those sorts of things, the
Yeah.
turnaround from what you would do, obviously, and then hand to a studio or whatever, did you have, you know, a lot of creative input, or it was simply just passing on an image that you'd captured? Did you,
Well,
from an
what
artistic
I
and
loved
design
about
point?
television, I mostly worked started working for NBC first, but then I did a lot of work for years with Fox. What I loved about TV is that you worked with really talented art directors and creative directors,
Yeah,
and they would do, drawings. Nowadays they call them mood boards, but they would do
yeah,
these drawings and breakdowns, and we need this, and this pieces, and then they'll put it together so they make you look good.
yeah,
I always liked that. And I like the one main guy I worked with a lot, a guy named Tom Morrissey, who worked at Fox Television for years, was a genius, still is a genius. And he made me look good every campaign. He would tell me, I need these shot against red. I said, okay. And I shoot the cast, the crew, whatever, and then a few weeks later, he'd send you the final design. You're like, wow, I look really good. Or you'd see the billboard in Times Square and you'd
yeah,
go, all right, this is pretty cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
mind blowing. But yeah, like that stuff was a lot more planned out
yeah.
than say a music shoot where you're just kind of Chris. They would literally tell me, "Here's the band, do whatever you want to do," and I was kind of nice that way.
Yeah, for sure. Because I was thinking when I was writing that question, it's like, I mean, that must have been a relatively easy sort of environment to step into because you'd have, your lighting, your directions, your sets,
Yeah,
your behind the scenes, everything plotted for you, and all you had to do was arrive and capture
yeah.
those
And
moments.
especially when digital started in that world, I guess it would be early 2000s.
Mm.
What I loved was I would show up to the shoot, and I'm not lying. I would show up to the shoot with my iPod with my playlist. That was it. Because they'd have a digital crew, a camera that would bring the cameras. They'd had everything. I brought my 5 assistants, all the gear would show up. I just showed up with my iPod plugged in and said, here, we're listening to this today. The rest was there for me.
Yeah,
It
right.
was so nice. It was you got spoiled real fast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
for
really
sure.
good catering too.
Yeah.
So, it was a lot of it was nice. I always
Yeah,
That's what I like to tell my young photographers. I start describing these things to them and how things were done and the money, shooting a TV shoot I started out about 15,000 plus expenses and then it averaged off about 10,000 plus expenses and then I think the last probably few I did it got knocked down to about 5,000 plus expenses.
yeah, yeah.
And nowadays I'm guarantee it's nothing compared to that.
No, absolutely not. It's funny how the industry is sort of almost eaten itself in that
Yep.
regard.
Yep.
And there are so many, it's so oversaturated and the work is so minimal,
Yeah,
it's
I used to have my first agency I was with, a company called Visage in LA. We represented Herb Ritz, me, Paul Jasmine, I think Matthew Ralston was there for a little while, all these big shot photographers, and I was the young pup. But I used to see these guys' invoices and I couldn't believe it. Herb
yeah,
Ritz getting $100,000 for an ad campaign. And
yeah,
I'd be like, how do I get that?
yeah.
Like up until that agency, most money I ever saw was like $1,000 in a day.
Yeah, wow. Wow.
But
That's incredible.
yeah, the money was crazy.
Yeah.
Album cover shoots at my peak, I was doing album covers for 25,000 plus expenses.
And there are some iconic ones amongst that. What's your
Yeah.
favorite album cover that you've shot?
Um, there's two. And it's weird, it's just because it's personal more than anything.
Yeah,
Stanley Clark's If This Bass Can Talk,
yeah,
and then the Clark Duke project, because when I was in high school, he was my hero. I saw him and I saw the Clark Duke project one year, and I love George Duke. Actually, his birthday is today. I just posted a photo. Um, I grew up, like I said, I grew up with this crazy kind of music, but I've done over 200 packages, and those two stand out because, I think it's 3, 4 years where I saw Stanley Clark perform live, and then like 3 years later, I got to meet him, and then I shot his album cover. I met him in '88, and then I shot his album cover like a year or two later, and it's like I'm shooting my hero's album cover. I'm part of his history. It just to this day it blows my mind.
for sure.
Like,
Absolutely.
my second official shoot of music was Maurice White from Earth, Wind and Fire, and I'm like I always tell people, and it's no true. You can see the stories on my website or my app and stuff, but like I couldn't believe I was going to shoot my hero. And he comes to the studio, we do the shoot. He wants to look at the photos when they're done. So I go up to his house in Beverly Hills. And it's just mind blowing that you're like, I'm hanging out with this guy. It's like the greatest day of my life. And then I got to meet George Harrison shortly after that.
And that's another one because George Harrison is my favorite Beatle.
Mine too.
Yeah. And what an experience that must have been. And again, there are other interviews out there with you where you talk about that whole story and sort of being given
Well,
5 minutes
don't
here
know if you check.
there.
Yeah, but I don't know if you checked out. I have an app, the Greatest Hits app, that I put out a couple years ago, and it has video. It has my greatest hit photos, and then which are adding more and more. But then there's a video telling the story behind the photos. So
Yeah,
George Harrison, you name the photo, you can hear the video, watch the video of me telling the stories. I'm so proud of this app. It's all done by iSparks out of New Zealand. And it's the greatest thing. It's something I dreamed about for a long, long time because Richard Davidon had an app.
yes,
So
right. That's what inspired all of that. Right.
yeah.
Okay. And what
But
an
the
incredible
stories
app.
behind the photos are the best part for me, anyways.
Yeah. 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 I guess reliving the stories and the experiences. Now, before we leave film for now
Yeah.
and television, your favorite personality to have shot from film and television?
Oh, wow. Well, my hero. So I was blessed to I shot, the young ones, the new people and new
Yeah.
shows like Courtney Cox when she was her first show or a
Yeah.
Jennifer Aniston on her first. That was great. But I'm old school and I'm old. So I grew up on these old stars. So I got to shoot Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau, uh, uh, Ernest Borgnine, James Garner, Kirk Douglas.
Yeah.
But my hero, number one, probably would be Sidney Poitier. I shot him for Turner Networks one year.
Yeah.
Uh, he was my hero as a kid. I loved the movie To Sir with Love. It's one of the greatest movies
Yes.
ever. And going to his house, he lived right in the fringe of Beverly Hills in Hollywood. Going to his house and setting up and meeting him, and he was everything you dreamed of. So he was one of my heroes, and I got to shoot him. My second other one that is like tied was Gregory Hines, the great dancer.
Yes.
That was one of the greatest days of my life, watching him create and or choreograph a dance and everything. That was just magical.